I was 23 years old when I found out I was over 80,000 reais in debt. The problem? I had never applied for a single line of credit in my life. And when I found out who had done this to me, my whole world fell apart. My name is Raphael. I'm 25 now. And this is the story of how my own parents destroyed my financial life before I even entered the job market. For 15 years, they used my social security number as if it were theirs. Loans, financing, credit cards, electricity bills, phone lines, internet accounts, everything under my name. And I had no idea any of it existed. What I'm about to share isn't easy to talk about, but I need to say it because I know many people go through this in silence. It all started when I was 23 and tried to open my first bank account with a digital bank. It was supposed to be simple and quick. I just needed an account to receive my paycheck from my first steady job. I worked at an electronics store, earned about 1.5 minimum wages. Nothing special, but it was mine, honest. I filled out the application, sent my documents, and waited. 2 days later, I received an email that said, "Unfortunately, your request has been denied due to credit restrictions." Credit restrictions? I had never even applied for a credit card, never bought anything in installments. I didn't know much about finance, but I knew something was very wrong. I went to a credit bureau office to check my record. The woman at the desk typed in my information, looked at the screen, frowned, and asked, "Are you sure you want to see this?" My heart started racing. She turned the screen toward me. I had 14 active negative marks, debts with banks, retail stores, finance companies, phone providers. Some debts were over 10 years old. I did the math quickly. 10 years ago, I was 13 years old. My stomach turned. I asked if there had been some mistake, maybe someone else with the same name. She checked again. No mistake. It was my social security number, my full name, my birth date. I left that place in total shock. I called my father first. I explained everything. He went silent for a few seconds and then said, "Son, we need to talk in person." The tone in his voice gave me chills. I went to my parents' house that same night. My mom was in the kitchen, my dad sitting at the dining table. He wouldn't look me in the eyes. I repeated what I had discovered and showed them the credit report. My mom started crying before I even finished. And right there, at the same table where I had eaten dinner my whole life, my dad confessed everything. When I was 8 years old, they were going through serious financial hardship. My dad had lost his job, my mom worked as a house cleaner, and they couldn't pay the bills. Both of their names were already ruined. No bank would open an account, no store would give them credit, nothing. Then someone gave them an idea. Use your son's social security number. Kids don't have bad credit. You can get a small loan or credit card and pay it back later. And that's exactly what they did. They used my documents to get a credit card in my name. They used it to buy food, pay electricity bills. They told themselves they'd pay it off soon, but they didn't. Then came another bill, another debt, another card, and another, and another. For 15 years, my social security number was their lifeline. Every time they couldn't pay something, they used my name. Every time they needed credit, I was the one who applied. They financed a car in my name when I was 16, took out a fake payroll loan when I was 19, opened phone lines, cable TV, internet, everything with me listed as the account holder. My dad cried while telling me this, said he never imagined it would go this far, that he always thought he'd managed to fix everything before I found out. My mom kept repeating, "I'm sorry," over and over. I couldn't process it. They were my parents, the people who raised me, fed me, gave me a home. But they were also the people who had stolen my identity, who had ruined my name before I even had the chance to build anything. I went home that night and didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about what it all meant. I wouldn't be able to finance a motorcycle, couldn't rent an apartment, couldn't get a credit card for emergencies, couldn't do anything. My financial life had ended before it even began. And the worst part? They were my parents. I could scream, I could curse, I could cut contact. But then what? They were still my parents, and I still loved them, even with all that anger burning in my chest. I spent 3 days without talking to anyone. I skipped work, turned off my phone, locked myself in my room. My friends thought I had disappeared, but I just needed time to think. I researched everything I could about identity fraud, misuse of social security numbers, how to fix credit. I read dozens of forums, watched videos, joined support groups online for people who had gone through similar things. And I learned my story wasn't unique. There were parents, uncles, grandparents, older siblings, family members ruining children's financial lives.
Almost everyone said the same thing. You need to file a police report. You need to take legal action. It's the only way to prove it was fraud. But how could I do that? How could I go to the police and accuse my own parents of fraud? Would they go to jail? Would they get a criminal record? Would I destroy their lives the same way they had destroyed mine? I spent 2 months stuck in that dilemma. I tried other options first. I called the banks and companies, explained everything. Most of them said I needed a police report or a court decision proving fraud. Without that, the debts were legally mine. I tried negotiating, but it was over 80,000 reais. With my salary, it would take me 20 years to pay. 20 years paying for things I never bought, never used, never benefited from. That's when I made the hardest decision of my life. I went to the police station and filed a report. I declared I had been a victim of fraud, that my documents had been used without my consent. I didn't mention my parents by name, but the officer told me that during the investigation, they would discover who signed the contracts, and those people could face criminal charges. I left feeling like the worst person in the world. I called my dad and told him what I'd done. He went silent. Then he said, "I understand, son. You're right. We were the ones who did wrong." But his voice was broken, and I knew I had just put my parents in a situation that could destroy what was left of their lives. In the following weeks, I got a public defender since I couldn't afford a private lawyer. He said my case was strong. I had been a minor when most of the debts were made. There was proof the signatures weren't mine. Some contracts even had photos of my parents, not me. We filed lawsuits against all the banks and companies, asking for the debts to be canceled, my record cleared, and compensation for emotional damages. The process was slow, very slow. It took almost a year just to get the first rulings. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents was shattered. We barely spoke. When I visited, it felt like an obligation. My mom tried to talk, but I couldn't look at her without feeling anger. My dad stayed quiet, head down. He knew he had broken my trust in a way that might never be repaired. The police investigation moved forward. My parents were called to testify. They confessed everything, said they did it out of desperation, but knew it was wrong. The officer could have charged them with fraud, but since they confessed and were my parents, he decided not to pursue criminal charges. He registered it as family fraud, which was enough for my civil cases. One by one, the rulings came in my favor. Banks removed my name from their records, debts were canceled. Some companies were ordered to pay damages for granting credit to a child without proper verification. In total, I received about 15,000 reais in compensation. It wasn't much, but it was something. More importantly, my name was clean. After almost 2 years of fighting, I finally had a clear credit record. I could open a bank account, get a credit card, rent an apartment, live. Today, 2 years later, my financial life is rebuilt. I rent an apartment in my own name, have a car loan that I'm actually paying myself, and a decent credit score. I got a better job, I'm saving money, planning my future. But the price was high. My relationship with my parents has never been the same. We talk, yes. We see each other sometimes, but that trust, that unconditional love, it broke. And I don't know if it will ever be the same again. My dad has apologized 1,000 times, said if he could go back in time, he'd never have done it. Mom, too. Have I forgiven them? I think so, or at least I'm trying. But forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean things go back to how they were. People ask if I regret filing the report, suing the companies, exposing my parents. And the answer is no, I don't regret it. Because if I hadn't done it, I'd still be paying debts that weren't mine. I'd be stuck in a destroyed financial life, unable to grow, unable to build anything. What my parents did was wrong, period. No matter how desperate they were, no matter how much they needed help, using a child's social security number to solve financial problems is a crime, and the consequences are devastating. If you're going through something similar, if you found out a family member used your identity, I know how hard it is. I know the pain of choosing between protecting your family and protecting yourself. But I'll tell you this, you need to protect yourself. You need to file a report. You need to clear your name. Because your life cannot be sacrificed for someone else's mistakes, even if that person is someone you love. There are resources, public defenders, lawyers who specialize in fraud cases, organizations that help victims of financial crimes. You are not alone, and you don't have to carry this alone. I carried this weight for 2 years, and today I can say it was worth fighting, worth facing, worth making the hardest decision of my life. Because today I have my financial freedom back, and no one can ever take that away from me again. If this story helped you in any way, subscribe to the channel for more real stories like this.